All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Denver's Sidewalk Program Zoom webinar on the Sidewalk Implementation Plan. This meeting is being recorded. To hear this meeting in your preferred language, please click the interpretation button or the globe icon in the bottom of your screen, and then select the language you would prefer to hear this webinar in. We'll give people a few minutes to join and begin our presentation shortly. There will be a Q&A portion at the end of the webinar, so please stay on to get your questions answered.
Muy buenas noches a todos y gracias por acompañarnos a esta reunión virtual de la ciudad y el condado de Denver acerca del plan de implementación de aceras para toda la ciudad. Le damos la bienvenida a todos. Si quieren escuchar esta reunión en su idioma, lo pueden hacer en unos minutos. Vamos a abrir la interpretación, así que lo va a poder escuchar completamente en español. Ahí en su pantalla va a poder ver cómo poder hacer funcionar para poder escucharlo en su idioma, así que aquí vamos a empezar muy pronto. Muchas gracias.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm just going to repeat a few things a little bit over again for everyone. Welcome to the Denver Sidewalk Program Zoom webinar on the Sidewalk Implementation Plan. This meeting is being recorded. To hear this meeting in your preferred language, please click the interpretation button or the globe icon in the bottom of your screen and select the language you would like to hear this webinar in. We'll give people just a few more minutes to join and we will begin our presentation shortly. There will be a Q&A portion at the end of the webinar, so please stay on to get your questions answered.
Otra vez, muchísimas gracias a todos por acompañarnos. Bienvenidos a esta reunión de la ciudad de Denver acerca del programa de implementación de aceras. Le damos la bienvenida para poder escuchar esta reunión en su idioma. Va a poder hacerlo en unos minutitos. Va a poder hacerle clic ahí en el globo, poder escoger español y va a poder escucharlo en español. Un recordatorio también, después de la reunión vamos a tener una oportunidad para preguntas y respuestas donde usted va a poder hacer las preguntas que ustedes tengan. Vamos a esperar un minutito más, pero bienvenidos a todos a esta reunión virtual acerca de las aceras aquí en Denver.
All right, everyone. Welcome to Denver's Sidewalk Program Zoom webinar on the Sidewalk Implementation Plan. This meeting is being recorded. To hear this meeting in your preferred language, please click the interpretation button or the globe icon. That will appear when we begin the content of the presentation, if it hasn't already. And then please select the language you would like to hear this meeting in. I think we can go ahead and get started with the presentation. We'll get going. There will be a Q&A portion at the end of the webinar, so please stay on to get your questions answered.
Bienvenidos a todos, gracias por estar con nosotros en esta reunión virtual de la ciudad del condado de Denver acerca del programa de aceras y el plan de implementación de aceras. Usted va a poder escuchar esta reunión completamente en español. Haga clic en los tres puntos horizontales, pulse el lenguaje de interpretación, escoja el español y recuerden que al final de esta presentación vamos a tener la oportunidad para hacer preguntas y respuestas. Así que vamos a darle inicio a esta reunión virtual esta noche.
All right. And with that, let's go ahead and get going. I'll turn it over to you, Paige.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you everybody for joining us tonight to learn more about sidewalks and the sidewalk implementation plan. Quick agenda run through here. I'm going to introduce ourselves, or the team members who are going to be working on this plan. We'll give a brief introduction and update on what the sidewalk program is and what we've been up to over the past year. Then we'll dig into a little bit, what is a sidewalk implementation plan and why are we doing it? And then the big portion of this is to introduce you to our state of the system report, an interactive dashboard that goes along with that. And we'll be giving a little bit about additional ways you can participate in our process, and then we'll open it up for questions. Next slide. Awesome. So starting with tonight's speakers, I'm Paige Fulton. I am the Sidewalk Implementation Plan Project Manager with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure here in the City and County of Denver. I'm joined by my colleagues, Chris Callanan, who is our Sidewalk Program Community Engagement Specialist, and Geneva Houghton, who is the Sidewalk Program Director. We're also joined by our colleagues who are helping us out with the plan. Morgan Marion, a Community Engagement Specialist with CIG, and Sydney Provin with Fair and Peers as Senior Transportation Planner. Okay, turning it over to Chris.
Thanks, Paige. Thanks again for everybody joining our webinar this evening. I'm going to be giving a little bit of context about how we arrived at this moment with the Sidewalk program here in the city and county of Denver. So prior to 2022, sidewalk districts were established actually in the city and county in the 1880s to replace the original wood walkways with flagstone and concrete as part of the City Beautiful movement with Mayor Spear. We ultimately did phase out sidewalk districts in the 1950s and assigned responsibility to property owners for both the establishment and maintenance of sidewalks in front of their or adjacent to their property. This model unfortunately led to a pretty inconsistent and incomplete sidewalk network across Denver as the city developed. Next slide. Through the Denver Deserves Sidewalk campaign, a group of very motivated members of the public initiated a ballot initiative called Ordinance 307. This was a community-led movement with the goal of expediting construction and maintenance of Denver's sidewalk and the establishment of a complete sidewalk network and a sidewalk network for Denverites that is in a state of good repair. Ultimately, they were successful in their campaign, and in November 2022, they were able to get voter approval to charge property owners a fee for the city to build and maintain a sidewalk network. Over the last few years, the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, or DOTI, formed a stakeholder committee to consider some of the practical recommendations and refinements for implementing the ordinance, including weighing in on the fee structure to ensure affordability for our residents and property owners. The committee's efforts ultimately led to some amendments to the municipal code, which was voted on by Denver City Council in September of 2024, and that officially allowed for the collection of sidewalk service fees and the establishment of the sidewalk program beginning last year in 2025. So here we are in 2026, and similar to 2025, we are charging all property owners a base access service fee, service charge as $150 in 2026. This flat fee applies for about 96% of all property owners in Denver and 99% of all single family homes in the city as well. Larger properties are assessed a fee that is a little bit more. We call it an impact fee for property frontage to the public right of way over 230 feet. And when we say the public right of way, that basically means anything beyond your private property that the city owns or maintains. We do have an affordability rebate program that we established as part of our kind of initial program setup. And we encourage folks to find out more about that program and apply for rebates if you are eligible at denvergov.org/sidewalks. Ultimately, when voters established and gave the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure the mandate to build out this sidewalk network and maintain it in a good state of good repair, we also received the mandate to deliver that with urgency. We need to build approximately 318 miles of new sidewalks. We need to widen approximately 1,162 miles of deficient sidewalks. You'll kind of notice that throughout this presentation, we talk about deficient sidewalks as Hollywood or curbless sidewalks, just for context. And then we need to repair approximately 1,233 plus blocks of sidewalks that need repair. Historically, just for context, the city has delivered less than 9 miles of sidewalk per year. We have not had this mandate to build and maintain a sidewalk network before this, but just to give you an idea of where we have been and where we need to go, there's a lot of scale that we need to build out capacity for in the sidewalk program that's being established. The program like I said, is being asked to rapidly scale sidewalk delivery within a targeted 9-year timeframe or as soon thereafter as possible to get our sidewalk network complete. So here we are in 2026. Last year was the first year that we started assessing those fees to property owners. And it's the first year that we began our repair activities and construction activities for new sidewalks. We repaired more than 30 miles of sidewalks last year, and we built out more than 10 miles of new or widened sidewalks. One caveat or note to take into account is that that includes private development, where developers are expected to build out new sidewalks adjacent to their property that they're developing. We do expect that number to rapidly scale in the coming years. And in 2025, we also kicked off the Sidewalk Implementation Plan, which you'll hear a lot more about in this presentation. And we obviously kind of started to kick off the internal program setup and advanced delivery. The 2025 annual report, which is required by city ordinance, is coming and will be published in late February. So we definitely encourage folks to sign up for the email updates at denvergov.org/sidewalks to get more information about that annual report once it's published.
Okay, so the Sidewalk Implementation Plan, this is one of our big efforts this year, and it's a requirement of the ordinance and will answer the questions of where, when, and how the sidewalk program will reach its goal of completing Denver sidewalk network in both the short and long term. So a couple high-level purposes of the plan. We want to have specific strategies and actions to guide how the program delivers sidewalks over the next 6 years. We want to identify work plans for building, widening, and repairing sidewalks across the city over the next 9 years. As Chris pointed out, that 9-year timeframe is called out in the Denver Revised Municipal Code language, and so we're going to look at that 9-year period. And then lastly, we're going to establish the foundation for a successful and transformational program over the next 20 years and beyond. So starting more specific as we look at that 6-year period, and then getting less specific as we look farther into the future. So the planning process is going to happen over the next year, and we really want your input into this process to make this a comprehensive, really great plan that we've all bought off on and agree with on how to deliver the sidewalk network in Denver. So here is our project timeline. We are right now showing you our state of the system report, which kind of sets the baseline for what we're looking at, what are the needs of the network today. And we are asking you, what are your high-level priorities for sidewalk construction and repair? Later this year, and in late spring, we'll come back to you. We'll have taken all the technical work that we've been doing behind the scenes and your prioritization preferences and developing work plans, so possible ways which we could move the program forward. So we'll be asking you, what feedback do you have on how the program will phase and stage work? And then later in the summer, we'll come back with a draft plan and get feedback on that. When we deliver that draft plan, we'll also be providing you information on how to track progress of the sidewalk program moving forward and how to know when sidewalks are coming to an area near you. So some outcomes, I've laid out the high level ones, but some other outcomes we're hoping to achieve with this implementation plan. We want to purposely engage and educate you all, the residents of Denver, about sidewalks and how we're going to be delivering sidewalks through the program. We want to collaborate and build relationships with other agencies and delivery partners. For example, a lot of Excel streetlights are in a spot where we might want to be putting a sidewalk. We'll have to coordinate really well with Excel Energy, for example. We also want to enhance our inventory data and cost estimation, which really just means we want to understand more specifically how much network build out is going to cost and work backwards from that to develop our work plans for the next 9+ years. We want to reach a consensus with you all on how we're going to be delivering the program, as I mentioned, and then by the end of this year, we really want to have a plan where we can say, okay, we're going to start designing and constructing all these new sidewalk improvements starting in 2027. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Sydney to give us a sneak peek into the state of the system.
Thanks, Paige. We can go to the next slide. So I'll start with giving an overview of the purpose of the State of the System report, why it's important that we're starting here for the plan, and how it's going to help us answer questions as we continue to move into the next phase of this project. So the first purpose is to continue to build on the inventory and analyze the existing sidewalk network. This will allow us to establish a baseline understanding of where sidewalks are missing, deficient, or in need of repair. And at a high level, gives us a sense of just the scale of improvements that are needed across the city so that we can better plan ahead for how the program will get that work done over time. The other purpose is to inform the public about the history of Denver's sidewalk program, so how we got here and how the program was established and why, and then also to just inform the public of the sidewalk implementation plan as a whole and what the kind of next phases of the project will look like. And then the last purpose of this report is to begin to compile a lot of the key considerations and trade-offs that will be going into sidewalk construction and reconstruction. So there's a lot of layers to different contexts for where sidewalks will be built and rebuilt throughout the city that the city is starting to kind of get an understanding of and work through a lot of the contexts and challenges they'll have to be responsive to as they do this work. So I'll be doing a demo of that report. It's all online, so encourage you all to review it after this meeting. And included in that report, I'll also demo our interactive dashboard and then show you all where our survey is and encourage you all to take that survey after this meeting as well. So the URL is denvergov.org/SOTS. So that is the URL for the page I'm going to demo now. All right. So this is our online State of the System report. I won't go through this in detail, but just kind of want to orient folks to the different elements in here so you can go ahead and explore more on your own later. So as we scroll down, you'll see this navigation bar at the top here. And it's separated into different sections that I'll kind of talk through briefly. We start with an introduction about why we care about sidewalks, why are they important, and also some more information that we just gave now of what the sidewalk program is and what the sidewalk implementation plan is as well. Then we have our next section is Denver's sidewalk evolution. This is information that Chris presented on how sidewalks historically have been built and maintained in Denver, the ballot measure, and then the sidewalk program today. Then the meat of this report really starts in Denver's current sidewalk section. So this is where we provide information about what the sidewalk network looks like today. This section starts out with some kind of highlight information and graphics about the sidewalk network. This is a graphic summarizing the citywide sidewalk network and the needs for new and repaired and widened sidewalks across the city. So of all sidewalks in the city, about 43% are either missing or they're less than 5 feet wide. So will need to be built or widened. And then we know there is repair needs across the city. This data we have now in our mapping software is what we're showing as 5% of sidewalks in the city are in need of repair. We know that this data set will continue to be built upon and grow, so we'll have a better understanding of repair needs as the project and the program continue. But this is just kind of a snapshot of our data as we have it today. I encourage folks to click through the other sections in this. If you click the little arrows to the right and left in this section, you'll see a breakdown of the sidewalk network by different contexts. So equity priority neighborhoods throughout the city, near transit stops, in safety priority areas and near the high injury network, and then near key community destinations, which we've defined as schools, parks, food stores, and health centers. So I encourage everyone to dig into those highlights a bit more. In addition, in this Denver's Current Sidewalk section is where you'll find our interactive dashboard. You can interact with the dashboard in this report itself if you would like, but I also find it easier to make it full screen. So if you'll see where my pointer is, this little box with the arrow, if you click that, you can view it in full screen, which some folks might find a little bit easier to explore. As you can see, this dashboard is a map of the current sidewalk network in Denver. We have it symbolized by existing sidewalks in blue and missing sidewalks in red. You can zoom in and out and pan around the map using your mouse. Then on the left-hand side of the dashboard, we have a lot of different filters that you can turn on and off to explore the data further. You can isolate sufficient width sidewalks. So these are those existing sidewalks that are 5 feet wide or wider. You can also isolate by missing sidewalks and explore that way, or explore deficient width sidewalks, which again are less than 5 feet. We have a lot of different aspects you can filter the data with over here, including width, material, the council district and neighborhood, and some of those other contexts that I walked through in the highlight section. So feel free to go in and explore this data. One other thing I will point out is that as you select different filters, you'll see that the stats on the right-hand side of the screen update. And that allows you to kind of see the scale of that sidewalk attribute as you click around and add different filters. One thing I will point out about this data set that's important to keep in mind is that this is a living data set. The city is continuing to build upon it, improve upon it. We know it's not perfect to the block and parcel scale, but the way we're using it right now for this implementation plan is more at a more aggregate scale at the neighborhood level to understand the scale of the issues and that need to be addressed. So if every single line we know is not 100% perfect right now, so just keep that in mind. The city's continuing to update this data and is using it at that more aggregated scale rather than block by block. All right, the last couple sections I want to point out in this report include our factors for building sidewalks section. This section is those considerations I mentioned that the sidewalk implementation is starting to think through and will continue to detail more as the project goes on. But all of the different things that impact sidewalks, may challenge the building and widening of sidewalks, or just different kind of contexts that the city is going to need to be aware of as construction moves forward. So encourage you all to jump into this section and click through these different topics to learn more about them. Then our final section I want to point out in this report is our survey that is active right now. And as I mentioned, would really love all of you to take this survey and kind of give your input after this meeting. So if you click the give your input at the top bar, it'll take you to our survey here. If you prefer to take the survey in another language, we do have it translated into three languages other than English, which you can access by clicking this translation widget at the top and then selecting your preferred language. And with that, I will hand it back to Morgan to share her screen and Paige to take us to the next section. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Sydney. So our round of engagement for the next few months is laid out here. So we kicked off our plan website and our technical advisory group that we've put together in December. Really the meat of what we've put out is our state of the system and survey, which we launched in January. We've done a lot of outreach since then, but here we are in February with our telephone town hall, which we had last week, and tonight's webinar. This is really to get you acquainted with all the materials we have, the state of the system, and encourage people to take our survey. Over the next 2 months, we will be out in neighborhoods talking to people, mostly at rec centers, and then we have a variety of additional touch points planned. So really excited to see you all. You can definitely check our website. This is denvergov.org/SIP. We'll have all our events listed there, and please feel free to come and join us and talk to us. We also have a number of stakeholder meetings planned throughout the city. Sorry, my camera wasn't on. That we are attending as well. So hopefully see you out there for the next couple of months.
One thing before we advance to the Q&A session, I just want to emphasize that this program is pretty unique here in the city and county of Denver, even across our country in the United States, and we're having to ask a lot of questions that we haven't had to answer, or many municipalities haven't had to answer yet. So we really need your input. So your participation in all of our different phases of engagement. This is only a segment of our total engagement over the next year. We really encourage you to give your input, but also share it with members of your community, members of your network who are maybe a stakeholder. We're all stakeholders in the Sidewalk network for the city and county of Denver, because we need that input in order to inform this program over the next 5 or 6 years and beyond.
All right.
Chris.
So with that, it sounds like we're ready to move on to answering some questions. So before we get going, just a few housekeeping items related to question and answer. So in the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A box. Please click that, and that is where you can submit your questions for the project team to answer. We will be answering those questions live. So as I'm looking through the Q&A, we'll call out your question, and then we will have a project team member answer that in real time. We will be grouping together any similar questions and answers. So if we don't repeat yours word for word, we're just going to try to group any ones that have a similar question or answer together. As a reminder, with these meetings being recorded, all of the questions that end up in the Q&A box will also be recorded. So if we do not happen to get to your question, we will definitely be following up with a summary of all questions and responses to our meeting participants. For any common questions that we receive through the Q&A, we will be adding those to our project or our program webpage FAQs. All right, with that, let's start with some questions. All right, we got a few from Gina related to the fee. Thank you for submitting that. So for the first question, how did we get to the $150 fee? Could we talk a little bit about how we got to that number?
And I'll take that one. It's a great question, Gina. Initially, the citizen-initiated ballot effort ultimately kind of established a fee structure that we felt as the city and county of Denver would adversely or negatively impact the affordability here in the city and county of Denver. So the city quickly identified that as a barrier for folks, and we know that our kind of goals set by the mayor over the last few years have been around affordability. So we convened a stakeholder group that included the drafters of the initial ballot initiative, as well as special interest groups, whether or not those are RNOs or different areas within the city or entities within the city that have an interest in the pedestrian right of way. And we worked with we consulted with these partners, and we were able to kind of reach a compromise where we were able to identify a fee structure where the program would be bringing in enough revenue to accomplish the spirit of the initial kind of ballot initiative and ordinance, while also making sure that folks would be able to pay and not like feel the adverse impacts or negative impacts of a large fee on an annual basis.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. And then how long will that $150 fee last? What's the
Yes,
timeline?
this is important. So, this program was set up as an enterprise program, which is for folks who are familiar with TABOR or the Taxpayers Bill of Rights. It's exempt from those requirements. And because we were able to get voter approval for this enterprise program, this fund will be established in perpetuity or forever. So as the program progresses and we build out the entire sidewalk network and maintain it in a state of good repair, we will be collecting that fee on a perpetual basis.
All right, thank you, Chris. Will the city cover cost, repairs, or replacement of any damage and or the moving of sprinkler systems and landscaping? So how will sprinkler systems and landscaping be handled?
This is a great question for the program. We are certainly going to be examining this through our kind of planning effort, but right now we are covering those costs through our contracts. So if you have a sprinkler system and an adjacent property to sidewalk repair or installation, we will be covering that expense on behalf of the property owner at this time.
Okay, gotcha. We got a question from Bruce about boundaries between the private property and the right-of-way. Could we maybe expand a little bit on that, Chris or Paige, how that will work between the boundary between private property and the city right-of-way?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the public right-of-way on, I would say, most streets in Denver includes both the street itself, so between the curbs, and then extends anywhere from 5 to 20. It really depends where you are in the city, extends beyond the curb and often includes the existing sidewalk. If there's no sidewalk, often that property still is considered the public right-of-way. It is not a private property owner's property.
All
And
right.
it's a great question. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Paige. All right, we have a question from Joe a bit on the timeline. So we did mention the 9-year period that we are working on this. Paige, could you explain a little bit within that 9-year period, what is planning, how construction fits into that? Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, definitely. So as Chris mentioned during his kind of intro about the program, so the Denver Revised Municipal Code, which codifies and sets up this program, says we should try to fill in the gaps in the sidewalk network, widen the sidewalks that are less than 5 feet, and then repair the sidewalk network in the city within 9 years or as practicable thereafter. And what that really means to us is we need to figure out what is practicable, what is realistic for us to do as a program, how long will that build out take? And that is part of this planning process. So I mentioned that we're refining our cost estimates, we're better understanding what the needs are in all neighborhoods of the city, and that will help inform how long that process will take.
Thanks, Paige. Our next question is from William. He's asking about the responsibility of downtown sidewalks. Are they still the responsibility of the adjacent owner?
Yeah, I'll take this one. The answer is no, they are not necessarily the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. Part of the ordinance that was passed by voters basically transferred this asset, as we call it, to the city. And this doesn't necessarily, it's not confined necessarily to the downtown core. The asset of sidewalks as pedestrian infrastructure has been transferred to the city, and it is our responsibility to maintain that.
I will add that it is still the adjacent property owner's responsibility to do snow removal on the sidewalk adjacent to their property. So that hasn't changed. What has changed is the repair needs. So if there's damage, the city will now repair that. If it's missing or not wide enough, the city will take that on.
Thanks, Paige and Chris. We're getting a lot of great questions. Thank you so much for everyone that submitted a question so far. As we mentioned, if we do not get to your question, we will be following up with a summary, but we will certainly try to get through as many as we can. This next question is from Andre. He's asking about the delivery method of this program and scaling it as necessary. Will the city be building out in-house crews and expertise? Chris or Geneva, do you want to take on this one?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So it's a question that's really asking about our capacity, both internally and externally. And for right now, we are doing both. So we're building out in-house capacity and trying to grow the team internally. And because of this volume of work, we're also using consultants and contractors. Part of the question as to how the program will be delivered over the next 6, 9, et cetera years is that delivery mechanism. What does that look like? Are we going to have some of that done in-house with our own contracting crews that are out there fixing sidewalks, repairing sidewalks, building sidewalks? Or is that something that we're going to continue to use contractors for? And as of today, we don't have the answer to that question, but it's one that we need to be working through as a program.
Thanks, Geneva. We're seeing a few questions here about when construction will begin in certain neighborhoods. Paige, do you want to speak a little bit to how the plan will inform that?
Yeah, and I see a question about the East Colfax neighborhood. So all of the information about ongoing our projects that have already been designed and are moving into construction can be found on our website. That is denvergov.org/sidewalks. So really simple URL there. So please take a look and navigate to any development updates or build out updates will be on there.
All right, thank you, Paige. Another question from William. Do we have examples of major versus minor sidewalk repairs? Paige or Chris, do you want to take this one? And maybe if we do have examples on our webpage, or if we don't, we could maybe get some added. But do you want to elaborate a little bit on major versus minor repairs?
I Maybe Geneva, could you just cover what the spot repair program has been doing this year? I'm not entirely sure what the question is asking, but we can kind of talk to what we've already been doing.
Yes, definitely. I can take a stab at this, and Chris also knows really well. So in essence, what we're looking at is if it's a sidewalk where there's more than one gap, 1 inch gap between two different panels, if there's significant raveling, which looks like crumbling of the concrete, um, or if there's one more thing I'm missing. So those are things that we can generally fix. There are some bigger types of issues that come up. A lot of that is because of tree roots. As we know, as our trees grow, they are pushing concrete away, and those are requiring more design and consideration so that we can figure out a way to fix the sidewalks while also not damaging our trees. So for the past year, we've held off on making those repairs because of that sensitivity, and it's something that we need to be working through as a program. So I hope that answers your question. Chris, chime in if I missed anything.
Yeah, so that third criteria is not the elevation difference between sidewalks, but the actual distance between sidewalk panels. So that is also a 1 inch gap that we consider major sidewalk damage. One element that we certainly want to emphasize with this program is that we are encouraging everybody to be reporting major sidewalk damage through our 311 or online service now portal. We will have inspectors, and we do have inspectors who will go out and examine all of those reports that seem eligible for that determination of major sidewalk damage, and that those will be added for those that are eligible to our kind of queue for work within the city and county of Denver.
Thank you, Chris. All right, a question from Rudy asking about if the slides of this presentation will be shared. We are recording this meeting, and we will upload the recording of the meeting to our project webpage. So this presentation will be available there. Next question from Christine. Will the homeowners be responsible for remediating their landscape when if the sidewalks are widened?
This is a great question, and it's something that certainly we're kind of studying right now through our planning efforts. As it stands, if there is landscaping like kind of flower beds or different like lawns, or hardscaping, which includes things like fencing or retaining walls that are in the city's right of way, so that public property that the city and county of Denver and the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure is responsible for. It is the property owner's responsibility to both remove and if after sidewalks are widened and there is widening that goes into the property area, to replace those themselves. Right now, we'll remove whether or not the city figures out whether or not it's the responsibility of the property owner, just to ensure that we're delivering with expediency. But we certainly expect folks who have private property within the public right of way to be removing and kind of relocating their property when we extend.
Thank you, Chris. All right, we'll probably spend about another 10 minutes or so answering questions. So if you have not submitted your question into the Q&A feature, please do so. All right, our next question, another one from Rudy, thank you. Are property managers or homeowners able to make repairs to sidewalks that pose a significant trip hazard without city approval?
I can take this one. That's a interesting question, Rudy, and I do appreciate the gumption of let's fix these sidewalks. Any kind of work in the public right of way requires a permit, and you would still need to go through our permitting process for that work. But we are not going to stop you from doing that and spending either the HOA or your own personal money on those fixes. But you would need the city approval via that permit.
Great, thank you, Geneva. Another question from Christine. She mentioned that on one of the last slides, we mentioned bids and JIDs. Maybe Paige, could you explain a little bit about some of our stakeholder groups that we're interacting with?
Yeah, definitely. So BIDs and JIDs are business improvement districts or general improvement districts. Okay, seeing Chris nodding. So they are specific areas that have decided to levy a tax or a fee on business owners or within the neighborhood in a specific area in order to make improvements to the streets of and the environment of that area. So we have a couple specific kind of unique groups like BIDs and JIDs that we're talking with specifically because their work and responsibility kind of shifted with the program. So that is what those are. We also have another informational session for all HOAs. So we've invited HOAs to come and hear a presentation and ask questions. That's another big group whose responsibilities may have shifted with the sidewalk program. So we really want to make sure we're engaging them.
Great, thanks, Paige. And then our next question from Greta relates a little bit to some of the outreach and groups we are interacting with to get feedback on the plan. Could you maybe talk a little bit, Paige, about in addition to rec centers, where else we will also be having some of our pop-up events, and where else we'll be in the community?
Yeah, great question. And I see, are we able to come to community meetings as well? Certainly shoot us an email. Our email address is sidewalks@denvergov.org, and we can see if that'll work. But we're happy to come and present at existing meetings.
All right, thank you, Paige. Next question, is there an overall initial cost estimate for the project as it stands? Paige or Chris, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, we might need a little bit more clarification about what project they're referring to. Obviously, we have the sidewalk implementation plan, but there are individualized projects that we are looking at in terms of constructing sidewalks or repairing sidewalks. One thing I'll note is that through the sidewalk implementation plan, we're certainly looking at different scenarios for kind of context-specific costs that we can kind of generalize across different neighborhoods and regions within the city, depending on the local context. So that's certainly something that we're studying as part of the sidewalk implementation plan, but would need a little bit more clarity about what costs you're specifically referring to.
Thank you, Chris. All right, we have a comment from Bruce. He did mention that he especially appreciated the survey allowing for inputting actual comments. Thank you so much, Bruce. And that's a great plug for our survey. If you have not taken it yet, that is on our project webpage, denvergov.org/SOTS. Our next question here is also related to the fee. It says the impact fee for folks with more than 230 feet of sidewalks seems low, considering that each foot of sidewalks costs hundreds of dollars. Charging $350 per foot seems low. And then a second question or a second part to that is how common is that much frontage? Chris, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, it's first of all not very common that folks have property that extends beyond that kind of established $150 base rate. As we noted earlier in the presentation, it is certainly less than 90% of properties within the city and county of Denver that have property frontage that extends beyond that. And we certainly understand that that might seem low, but we also want to make sure that folks who maybe have a home that's on a corner lot that has frontage that extends beyond that frontage footage are not assessed a disproportionately large amount of fee. I think one other element that we want to make sure that we really emphasize is that these fees are charged on an annual basis. So it's not like the property owners with additional frontage will be assessed only a one-time fee that's above that amount. They will be assessed that larger fee in perpetuity.
Thank you, Chris. Our next question is from Eric. Paige, I'll hand this one over to you. This is related to the sidewalk implementation plan and part of its purpose. The question is, how is DOTI planning to prioritize the earliest implementation of building, widening, expanding sidewalks? And then will the initial focus be on the high injury network and other safety priority areas? If not, why?
Yeah, great question. And that is what the sidewalk implementation plan will be answering, is where we are prioritizing the earliest implementation of all those projects. And in terms of high injury network, safety priority areas, so in that State of the System report you saw, we kind of broke down the data on sidewalk needs by each of these focus areas. And then again, in our survey, we are asking about those and if those areas and specific needs are still priorities of the community. So we've done, as the city, we have an existing sidewalk and trail plan from 2019 that laid out what the priority should be for building out new sidewalks. But that was before we had a dedicated funding source and such a big dedicated funding source to building out sidewalks. So it really prioritized the top priority projects. Well, now we have more money. We have a program, and how can we better align our prioritization with our current resourcing?
Thank you, Paige. All right, we have still quite a bit of questions. We will not get to all of them, but like we mentioned, we will be sending out a summary of all of the questions and responses. So no worries if we're not able to get to yours. Thank you so much for everyone who has submitted a question. All right, our next question here. How did we land on 5 feet for the ADA compliance? Why is 5 feet going to be our limit for ADA compliance?
Yeah, so we are defining deficient width sidewalks as being less than 5 feet. And so ADA compliance refers to a nationwide standard over how what the standard should be for how people with disabilities are able to access things. So you mentioned 3 feet. The amount is a little bit more, but that's the bare minimum of what a sidewalk should be. We chose 5 feet because nationwide, this is considered a practical standard sidewalk width. And a 5-foot sidewalk allows 2 pedestrians to travel side by side or to pass each other when traveling in opposite directions. So this will really serve everybody in our neighborhoods. This will serve people using mobility devices. It'll serve people pushing strollers, and it'll serve you if you're walking next to your friend to walk to the park. So 5 foot is our line. In addition, I will add our city standards call for 5-foot sidewalks. So we already are looking at 5 foot as the city standard. So we're just going with that as our existing standard. And then I do see at the other part of the question, will that mean we're widening into the street? That definitely will depend. In many places, we'll have space to build behind the curb and widen that sidewalk. In many places, it won't, and we need to make decisions. And that's what the plan will help us make decisions about what we do when we run into any particular issue or need in the field as we're widening those sidewalks.
All right, thank you so much, Paige. I think we maybe have time for a couple more questions. Thank you so much. We have had a really robust Q&A session here. We really appreciate all the thoughtful questions. Again, we will answer a couple more and then we will finish up the presentation. If we did not get to your question, we will be following up with that summary. All right, our couple last questions here. Let's take this one. Let me see, where am I? So you may have already touched a little bit on this page as we were talking about widening sidewalks. We do have a question if there will be any priority given to expanding sidewalks toward the street as opposed to people's planting areas and lawns. If we didn't touch on that, like I said, you may already have a little bit. Could we elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, and that is something, I know this isn't a particularly satisfactory answer, but that's something we're working out over the next year as the program develops, as we work on the sidewalk implementation plan. Lots of considerations, you know, changing where the curb is costs a lot of money. It can impact drainage. So our streets convey not only people, but also water. So that could have big implications for the conveyance of water. Of course, if we expand into someone's lawn, perhaps that will also have impacts. So we need to decide on a way that we can treat the city equitably and move our program and sidewalk build out throughout the city in a way that feels fair to everybody, while keeping in mind all these different elements that we're thinking about as we build out the sidewalks.
Thanks, Paige. And then our last question relates to how can folks report any trip hazards or issues to get certain areas in the queue for repairs?
Yeah, I'll take this one. We have a couple of different ways, or a few different ways, for folks to repair major sidewalk damage. We covered that criteria for major sidewalk damage earlier on in the program, but want to kind of really specify the different avenues for reporting. So we have a requirement that there is a photo submitted along with major damage reports. So that, again, is those differentials of 1 inch or more. You can report those online via the denvergov.org Service Now portal, which is denvergov.org/report. It'll kind of take you through all of the request information, including the location and that photo upload. You can also report these through our new Sunny chatbot on denvergov.org. It will ask for an image upload as well. Sunny also has an SMS or text message reporting function that you can text while you're out and about on a walk, and you will be prompted to upload a photo as part of that process as well. So a few different ways, and appreciate everybody's commitment to helping inform the sidewalk program about that major sidewalk damage.
All right, thank you, Chris. And with that, we'll conclude our Q&A session. Thank you so much for all the questions. We really appreciate it. Again, this meeting will be recorded and we will get it up on the Denver Sidewalk Program webpage, so be on the lookout for that. And we will follow up with a summary of questions and responses to those here tonight. And with that, we'll move on to next steps.
Okay. So our ask of you tonight, so first of all, thank you so much for spending your evening with us and asking such great questions. This is exactly what we wanted to do here, is get your brain thinking, hear what you're wondering about. But our ask to you tonight is to review that State of the System report and take the survey that Sydney went through earlier in the presentation. So that's denvergov.org/SOTS. Please encourage your networks to take that as well. Take the survey, take a look at our State of the System report. You can sign up for project updates on our project website to be informed about the planning effort as we move through the year. That's at denvergov.org/SIP. That's also where our events are going to be listed, where we'll be out in the community. So please take a look there and see if you can pop by and talk to one of us. If you have individual questions about either the sidewalk program or about the sidewalk plan itself, you can direct those to sidewalks@denvergov.org. We also have a hotline number that is 720-337-6380. And then we'll also be following up with a Q&A from this meeting. So for all of those of you who did not get your questions answered, we'll follow up with answers to those. And I believe, oh, yes, here's our slide about reporting damage from missing sidewalks that Chris just mentioned. Take a look here, screenshot it if you'd like. And I think that is it for our presentation tonight. Thank you again, everybody, and have a great night.